Hello everyone, welcome to this session on how cloud computing works. Today in this session, I will walk you through what is cloud computing exactly and how does it work in the real world. Alright, so without talking more about what we're going to cover today, let's skip on to the agenda to understand what all we'll be covering in this session. So first I'll introduce you to what cloud computing is, and then we'll move on and discuss the different type of cloud models which exist out there. After that, we're going to move on and talk about the top cloud providers which are there in the industry right now, which provide the cloud service. And after that, I'll be showing you guys the top 3 cloud providers, that are Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and AWS. And we will be discussing its dashboard and how to launch a server on all these 3 platforms. So this is the agenda for this session, guys. I hope it's clear to you. Now let's go ahead and start off with the first topic, which is introduction to cloud computing. So what is cloud computing exactly? So guys, cloud computing is nothing but the use of remote servers on the internet to get your work done, right? So what you basically do is, if you have some work and instead of using your own system for it, right? For example, let's say you have a task which probably needs around i7 processor or some 64 GB of graphics, right? But let's say this task that you have in hand is just a one-time job. You will not be requiring it every day, right? Or you'll be not needing this kind of a config every day. So what you can do is you can deploy a configuration of such sort on cloud, get your work done, and once you're done with the work, just stop or terminate your instance which you deployed on cloud, or the server that you deployed on cloud, right? And what is the advantage that you get with this? The advantage that you get with this is you will be charged only for the time that you used that server. So if you compare it with what you would have done if cloud did not exist, if cloud did not exist, you would have bought a server like this, or you would have rented a server like this from some, from some agency who gives you computers. And whichever agency gives you computers, they will probably give it at least for a month for you to rent on, right? But with cloud, you can rent systems even for minutes, right? If you want a system for 5 minutes, you just take it for 5 minutes and give it back after 5 minutes, and you will be just charged for 5 minutes. This is what cloud computing is. This is why the cloud is booming these days. The reason for that is most of the startups, most of the companies, they do not want to invest in infrastructure, because infrastructure basically demands investment, right? And investment, when you talk about servers, servers are not cheap, right? So servers will give you a hole in your pocket. And if you want intensive compute servers, it's better to rent them, because first of all, there's no investment. So let's say if you're a startup and you have just started your business and you want to shut it down, or let's say after 15 days, if you realize that, you know what, business is not my thing, you can actually do that, because there's no investment involved, which will basically take up a lot of your money. Because most of the startups, if it's a software startup, the most money that will go somewhere is the infrastructure where your software would be set up, right? But like I said, if you are talking about cloud computing, you just pay for the time you have used it and then you're done. So this is why cloud is becoming such a boom in the market right now, and a lot of companies are using it. Now let's go ahead and just understand a use case which is around cloud computing. So let's say you're this guy, and today you want to start a company, which is, let's say, Instagram. So you want to go ahead and start a company like Instagram. So you develop the application, and now all that is left is making this application available to the world. So how do you do that? You hire some servers from the internet, that is from cloud, and you deploy your applications on these servers, right? So once you have deployed your application on these servers, you then connect it to the internet, and then that's how your application is deployed. Now, if I talk about some of the products which are deployed on cloud like this, some of the examples would be, let's say, the Amazon website, right? Netflix, which is the most popular streaming service on the internet, is also hosted on cloud, right? If we talk about Flipkart, if we talk about any software which is there in the modern world, Uber or Ola, all of these services are basically hosted on cloud, and you never know. So for example, you use Google Docs, right? For example, you use spreadsheets, you use Google Docs. Whatever you use is basically hosted on the cloud, and you never realize it, right? And what is cloud? It's, in the most basic sense, it's just a server which is not yours. You're just renting it, you're using it for the time you want, and then you're just paying the rent. Most of the companies, even if they're planning to use servers for long term, they don't want to invest in buying servers. Why? Because you must know, or you might know, that when any technology which comes in the market, it is bound to get obsolete one day, right? So let's say you invest in a very high-end server today, it could be that after 3 or 4 years, that technology becomes obsolete and there is more faster technology available in the market. And when that happens, you again have to buy a faster server. But with cloud, you don't have any commitment like this. So even if you are running something for 4 years, and after 4 years you feel your server is going down, what you can just do is you can just stop your instance, change your processors, or increase your number of processes, launch it again, and it's just that simple, right? So it does not involve any kind of investment. You just pay for what you have taken from cloud with respect to the pricing which is displayed on their website. For a 4-core CPU, obviously they'll charge less. If you want a 64-core CPU, obviously they'll charge more. So cloud has a very popular saying with it, which says pay as you go. So whatever you want, you pay for it and you're done. And whenever you're done, just give it back to the cloud and they will not be taking any long-term commitments for you. Having said that, so what are the advantages of cloud? So first of all, there is little or no investment, right? So you don't have to invest anything when you are wanting to work on cloud. You just pay the rent monthly, right? For the number of hours that you have used your servers. Second thing is you focus more on app development. So if you're a software company, you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. If there's anything which goes wrong with the hardware, each and everything is basically managed by your cloud provider, right? And the third and probably the most important thing, it requires less workforce. Why? Because now you have rented the hardware. You don't need hardware engineers in your company. You don't need people who will be handling your servers. Everything will be managed by your cloud provider, and hence it requires less workforce as well, right? So some of the products that I discussed earlier, for example, Netflix is a product, Google Drive is a product, Amazon Prime Video, Airbnb, these are all products which are hosted on the cloud and you use them each and every day. All right, moving forward, now let's talk about some important aspect about cloud computing. So right now you have a generic idea about what cloud is, but cloud goes more into depth with the kind of services it has to offer. Now the servers that you can rent are also of many types, right? For example, you can take the database server on rent, you can take an application server on rent, right? You can also take softwares on rent which are hosted on cloud. So these are all options which are there, and these are basically different models which are there in cloud. So essentially, if you were to talk about the different type of models which exist in cloud computing, you have two kind of models. The first model is basically the deployment model, and the second kind of models that you have in cloud are called service models, right? So what is the difference between the two? So deployment models basically means what kind of deployments can you do on cloud? So you can do a public deployment, you can do a private deployment, or you can even do a hybrid deployment. We'll talk more about these as we move along, but these are the three kind of deployments that you can do on cloud. What are deployments? Deployments are nothing but how you want to publish your application. You can either publish it on the public cloud, you can publish it on the private cloud, or you can publish it in a hybrid cloud. Now, what is service models? Service models are basically what you want from cloud, right? So here we were talking about publishing our applications. Here we are talking about the kind of service that we can expect from a cloud provider. We can take infrastructure as a service, which basically means you can rent the whole server from a cloud provider. That is infrastructure. That is, you have access to the operating system, you can install anything you want, and that's it. That's what infrastructure as a service is. So basically you just RDP or SSH into a machine and you can use that machine as if it's your own. That is infrastructure as a service. The next kind of service that we have is platform as a service, which basically means that you get a dashboard kind of a thing wherein you can deploy your application. You do not have access to the operating system. And the third kind of service that we get is software as a service, wherein you do not get access to the operating system, you do not get access to any dashboard. What you get is software. For example, Google Sheets is a software. You do not care about the server it is deployed on. You do not care about what operating system is being used behind, right? You just have a software in front of you which you can use. Similarly, Netflix is a service which is given to you. It's again a software which you use to watch movies, right? You don't care where it is hosted. You don't care which operating system is that service hosted on, etc. So let's delve into all these three one by one and understand them in detail. So if we talk about deployment models, the first kind of model is the public cloud. So where can you deploy your applications? You can deploy it on the public cloud. What that means is wherever you will be deploying your application, whichever server your application will be deployed on, that server will also be shared by multiple people. That is what public cloud means. So if you don't have a problem in sharing your hardware with other people, you can opt for public cloud. Now, is it safe to deploy your applications on public cloud? Absolutely. So what you do is in cloud, you deploy, let's say, a server of 4 cores. Right, but that does not mean that your cloud provider has a machine which has 4 cores in it. It basically means that it has one server which might have around 256 or even 512 cores of CPU, and out of that it has virtualized a machine which is of 4 core CPU and it has given it to you. Right. Similarly, let's say you want a machine of 16 core CPU. Then again, from the same server from which you gave the 4 core CPU machine, you again give a 16 core virtualized machine to the other person. So with this, on the same server, you have multiple people who can have their virtualized servers running, and that is exactly what public cloud is. The private cloud basically means that whatever server your cloud provider is giving you, right, no other person can deploy their applications on it. That is what private cloud means. So you can get an agreement with your cloud provider saying, you know what, I don't want any of your customers on the server on which I'm working. Right? It doesn't matter if you tell me that virtualized machines are all secure, they're all isolated. I don't care about that. I want a separate server of mine. So that is private cloud. The other meaning of private cloud is that you buy your own servers and then you use those servers as if you're using a cloud. That is also what a private cloud is. And some companies like IBM, companies like Microsoft, which have a lot of money and they don't want to rely on some other company for their hardware, they do that and they make their infrastructure available as cloud to their internal employees for their use. That is what private cloud is. Hybrid cloud basically means whenever you use public cloud and private cloud together. Now, why would you use that? Let's say you have some set of machines that you bought before cloud computing existed. Let's say you have some machines from 2003, 2004, right? And you cannot move the application on those servers from those servers to any other machine. And the reason for that is that the hardware that is being used is compatible with the software. If you change the hardware, your software ceases to work. Right? So if this kind of a situation is there, what you can do is from now onwards, whatever applications you want to deploy, you can deploy it on the public cloud. Right? And the existing applications, you can keep it on the private cloud. So if this kind of a setting is there, then you call this kind of a setup as hybrid cloud. And this is one of the deployment models on cloud. So how can you deploy your applications on cloud? You can either deploy it on a public server where it could be shared by multiple people. You could have your own server. You can request the cloud to give you your own server and then deploy your applications over there. Or you can also buy your own servers, and that is what private cloud is. Third option is a hybrid cloud where you can be having the advantage of best, or your advantages would be of the both worlds, which is the public cloud and the private cloud, and you can enjoy the advantages of both the worlds, right? So this is what the deployment models are. Now let's go ahead and talk about the service models. So what kind of services does cloud give you? So you have services such as infrastructure as a service, you have platform as a service, and then you have something called as software as a service. So what is infrastructure as a service? So when you get access to the operating system of the server, so you launch a Windows machine, you get access to the Windows machine, the desktop of that Windows machine, that is infrastructure as a service. Why? Because you're getting the access to a server on which you can install anything, you can delete anything, you can do whatever you want. That's it's as if you're using a personal computer, right? And that's why this kind of a service is called infrastructure as a service, right? Then the second kind of service that we have is called a platform as a service. Now, what is a platform as a service? A platform as a service basically is where you do not get access to the operating system. What you do get access to is basically a dashboard, wherein you can select, okay, let's say you want to deploy a Node.js application, you select I want a Node.js server, and then you hit on create. So what that does is it creates a Node.js server for you, and then again what you can do is from the same dashboard you can upload your website. So you do not have to deal with the operating system, you do not have to deal with installing softwares on it. You can do everything from one place without having to manage the hardware, without having to decide how many processors you need, how much RAM you need, which operating system you need. Everything is managed by the cloud provider. All you have to do is just use the dashboard to upload your application and select which kind of softwares you want to install on it. Okay, if you compare it with infrastructure as a service, you get just the operating system, the raw operating system, and you install everything over there, right, on your own, and then you make your application deployed on it. So this is what infrastructure as a service is, and some companies want this kind of a service, that is infrastructure as a service kind of a service. The reason for that is they want more control over the operating system. Some companies prefer platform as a service because they don't want to get into all the nitty-gritties of how to optimize an operating system, how to manage multiple applications on operating system. They don't want that headache. Hence, they can go for platform as a service. And the third kind of service is software as a service, wherein your software is deployed on the cloud and you give it to the customers as a service. You do not give them the access to the server. You do not give them any access such as a dashboard where they can deploy stuff. You just give them the software itself. For example, told you the example of Netflix. I told you the example of Google Drive. Now, all these are softwares which are deployed on the cloud, but you don't care about which operating system they are using in the background or where exactly are they deployed. You don't care about all that, right? What you care about is just the software and using it. So that is software as a service, and most of the companies also prefer software as a service, and the reason for that is you don't have to handle the headache of deployments, operating system, etc. Having said that, now we know what kind of services we can expect from cloud, but what all are the companies which are giving us these kind of services? So you have companies like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, then you have IBM, you have Terramark, you have a lot of other companies, but these three companies which you see on the screen are the top 3 cloud providers in the market, right? 80% of the companies which are there on the market which are using cloud technologies would be using any of these 3 services. The rest 20% could be on some other cloud provider, but 80% of the companies would either choose AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud. Okay, having said that, now let me go ahead and show you guys enough of theory. Now let me go ahead and show you guys how you can basically deploy your own system or your own computer on cloud platforms like AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud, right? So let's go ahead and do the hands-on. So let me just switch on to my browser, and let me show you how the dashboard of cloud basically looks like. So let me go to aws.amazon.com. So this is where I would have my AWS management console, right? And from here I can deploy servers. So let me just open this website. Now I can just log in by clicking on my account and then going to AWS management console. So like I said, just go to my account and then click on AWS Management Console. I'm sorry, this system is a little slow, so let's be patient with it. So while this is opening, let me also open Azure. So Azure is available on portal.azure.com. And let me open also Google Cloud. So cloud.google.com. Okay. So now my AWS management console is opening. My dashboard, Azure dashboard is also opening. And here my Google Cloud is also dashboard is also opening. Alright, so this is how my AWS management console looks like, guys. So these are all services which are there in AWS which I can use. Today in this session, what I'll be showing you is the EC2 service in AWS, which basically helps you to basically deploy a server. So let's click on EC2. Right? And here you will basically get a dashboard wherein you can launch a server for yourself. Right? So I might have a server running over here. I have one server which is already running. So let me just deploy a new server for myself so you can see what is basically the process. So I'll just click on running instances. Right, and now let's click on launch instance. Alright, so now I get the option of all these operating systems which are available, which I can launch on. So I have Windows, I have Ubuntu, I have SUSE Linux, Red Hat, and Amazon has its own operating system as well, which I can choose and launch. So let's go ahead and launch an Ubuntu server. All right, this is a 18.04 Ubuntu server. Let's click on select. So this is the operating system that I'm basically launching. Then I have the option of choosing what is the size of the server that I need. Do I need one core of CPU and 512 MB of RAM, or do I want one core of CPU and 1 GB of RAM? And this list goes on. I can also have 48 cores of CPU and 384 GB of RAM, or 64 core CPU and 512 GB of RAM. Right? The list is endless. Whatever you want, you can choose, and accordingly, it will basically give you a system. For example, over here you have 64 core of CPU, and then you have 732 GB of RAM. All right, so accordingly you can choose a size that you want. So let's say I'm going to choose the T2.micro, which is basically having 1 GB of RAM and 1 core of CPU. Right, next thing that we can consider is the network. So forget about the network as of now, you can just make it at default. Again, click on next. You can choose the number GBs of hard drive that you need. Let's say you need 100 GB hard drive, just specify 100 over here, and your hard drive will automatically become 100 GB. If you want a 50 GB hard drive, just specify 50 here, and you will get a 50 GB hard drive. So just specify the number that you want. And now let's just click on review and launch, and finally launch the servers. Now, whenever you basically create a new operating system, or whenever you launch a computer, obviously there are some security options configured in it, right? So traditionally what we do is we have a username and password, but when you work on cloud, they give you a more secure option. What they give you is a key pair, and what that basically means is they'll give you a file which you'll have to download, and whenever you want to connect to your system or your server on the cloud, you'll have to give them that file in order to connect. Right? Having said that, you can just create a new key pair, or you can choose an existing key pair that you already have. So I already have a file that AWS has given me, which is Lenovo-Ohio1, right? So let us use this same file and click on launch instances. So with this, my instance is now being launched, my server is now being launched. The launch time basically varies from a minute or sometimes under a minute also. Right, so this is in the pending state as of now. The moment it is ready, you will see the running state here. Right, so let's name it as AWS demo, and let me just refresh it, and as you can see, it's now in the running state, which basically means this server has been deployed. Similarly, if I go to Azure, my dashboard looks something like this. Right, it's a different dashboard, but essentially it follows the same set of rules. Right, so over here again, I can launch a server, and for that server is basically called a virtual machine. So I can just click on virtual machine, and it'll take me to the dashboard of virtual machines, and I can basically create it by clicking on add. Right, so if I click on add, again it will basically take me through a wizard, which will basically ask me the operating system that I want, the size of the machine that I want, right, the network settings, etc. Right, so let's wait for those that wizard to open up, and you will find a stark similarity between AWS, Azure, and GCP. All of them will basically essentially ask you the same thing, because there's nothing more that they can ask you while deploying a server. Right, for over here they will ask you a resource group, which basically means you can club all your resources inside one logical folder, and inside this folder all your virtualized resources will be listed. Right, so you can select a folder like that, then you can give your virtual machine some name. Let's call it, let's say, Azure demo. Right, what is the region that you want to deploy it in? So this is US. In AWS, we were already in the Ohio region where our service was basically deployed. Then what kind of operating system do you want to deploy? You can choose whatever operating systems are available here. Let's choose Ubuntu also over here. Right, what is the size of the server that you want to deploy? For example, right now the standard is 2 CPUs and 8 GB of RAM. Right, and it's telling you that the actual price will be around 5,000 a month. So if you want to change it, just click on change size, and then you can choose any size which is available in this list. You can also go for a higher size, or you can go for a lower size according to your preference, according to the application that you basically want to deploy. Right, so here are all the configurations you have. You can have 1 CPU and 2 GB of RAM. You can have 2 CPUs and 4 GB of RAM. You can also have 4 CPUs and 32 GB of RAM. Whatever is your preference, you choose that, and then you basically go ahead and click on select. Once you have done this, now it will ask you for the authentication side. For example, in AWS, you just had the option of having a key through which you can connect. In Azure, you also have an option of just connecting through the traditional way using password. So you will have to set the username here. Let's set the username as Azure. Password could be anything that you want to set. Right. Similarly, let me enter this password again. Right, and that's about it. Now let's click on, again you have an option of selecting your disks, what is the size of disk that you want. For example, here's a type of disk which is SSD, and then you can create a new disk. You can specify the size of the disk that you want. For example, here is a 1024 GB SSD, right? You can again change its size to anything that you want, right? It could be a 32 GB if you want, it's a 64 GB, but one thing is that you do not have a custom option over here as you had in AWS. So I have to go with either 32 or 64 or 128, but not anything less than that. Okay, so let's click on OK now and move forward. Now let's just go ahead and launch this server. And once all the settings have been verified, you will get this button which is create over here. So as you can see, the pricing is shown over here. The pricing is 5.48 rupees per hour, right? So let's go ahead and create. And now your server is getting deployed. As you can see, it says initializing deployment. This again will take a minute or so to deploy the server that you have selected. Similarly, if I come to Google Cloud, you will have similar options over here too, right? So let's click on console. It will take me to the Google Cloud console, right? And that will be the dashboard through which you can basically deploy your servers. Right, so this is how your dashboard basically looks like, guys. And here you can basically go ahead and choose all the services by clicking on this 3 dash button. Just click over here, and when you click here, you will see all the services which are there in Google Cloud listed in this particular pane. Right, so what we want to select is virtual machines. So let's go ahead and see the compute part. Here it is. So in compute, what you want to launch is a compute engine. In compute engine, what you want to do is VM instances. Let's click on that. Right, and let's click on create a VM instance. Right, so now it will ask you the name of the instance. Let's call it GCP demo. Right, where is the region that you want to deploy it in? It will be in Iowa, right? What is the size of the machine that you want? You can choose it from this list. You want 1 CPU, 4 GB RAM, 2 CPU, 8 GB RAM. You can choose all that you want. Then you can choose the operating system that you want to deploy. For example, right now it is deploying the Debian operating system. If you click on change, these are all the options that you can deploy in Debian. Then if you want, you can choose anything else, any kind of operating system from here. Let's say I choose Ubuntu, right? And here I can choose whatever version I want. Let's say I want to do Ubuntu 18.04. Let's select that and let's click on select. You also have the option of selecting your hard drive size here, so you can just specify the size. Let's say I want to deploy a 100 GB hard disk. Click on select and finally click on create. Right, and with this your instance is now getting deployed, and like the others, this is a little more faster. This will probably get deployed in under 15 to 20 seconds. Google is a little more faster when you compare it with the other cloud providers. So as you can see, it's already deployed. It hardly took 10 seconds to get this server up and ready. Now our next question is how to connect to all these servers, right? So as you can see, my Azure server is now deployed, my AWS is deployed, and my GCP is deployed. Now let's try to connect to these. So let's say I want to connect to this Ubuntu server. I'll just have to click on actions, click on connect, and I can connect through the browser based extension that is there in Azure, and let's click on connect. So this will basically open a window using which I will see the terminal of my EC2 machine, right? So this is the public IP, this is the private IP of my machine, and this is where I will get the terminal through which I would be able to connect to my machine. So it says there was a problem setting up the instance connection. Let's click on retry. If this does not work, this is a new feature which has been launched by AWS. This was just an option in Google Cloud and Azure before, right? But in AWS, they have now started offering this session manager. You can either use this, or there is an option of connecting through Putty as well, which is basically a software which you can download. So this is the Putty software, and what you have to do is just mention the IP address here. Let's say this is the IP address. Let's select it. Just mention it over here. Click on open, and it will basically open a window through which you would be able to connect to your server. So let's say my server username was Ubuntu, and now as you can see, this is my Ubuntu machine which has been launched on the Ubuntu server. So what I can do is I can just go ahead and do anything on this operating system. I can update this machine, I can install any software that I want, right? And everything is super fast over here. The reason for that is this is the AWS infrastructure, right? So let's go ahead and install a web server. And with this simple command, now if you go to your server, you would basically be able to access your website, any website that you want to deploy, you would be able to access. So what I just did is I just opened the firewall to allow all IP addresses. So with this, now if I go to this IP address of the AWS demo server, I would be able to see a website, which is the Apache website, which has basically just been deployed on my server. So if you guys also go to this IP address, you will be able to see this website. Similarly, if I go to Azure and if I go to my resource, which is basically my virtual machine, again I would be able to connect to it using the same method that I used to connect to my AWS machine, which is Putty, right? So you have the IP address, which is this. Let's copy this IP address. Let's go to Putty. Let's put the IP address here. So Azure does not need the authentication key. Let's delete it. Let's click on open. It'll ask you the username. So username was Azure, and let me give the password for this. And as you can see, now I'm connected to the Azure server also, right, which is deployed on the Azure infrastructure. Here again, I can just do anything that I want with this server. I can update it. Again, everything is super fast. And I can also, install the web server software on this system also. Okay. Similarly, if I move on to my Google Cloud, this is the machine that I launched. If I just click on SSH, it will basically launch a window similar to what you saw in AWS, and you would be able to connect to your machine through this terminal which Google Cloud is just going to give you. Right? So Google products are a little better when you want to use them. So this window should not give you any hiccups. Finger crossed. Right? And let's go ahead. Yes, so here I am inside my Ubuntu server. So here also I can do anything that I want. I can update the machine like I was doing it over there, right? So sudo apt-get update, it'll update the machine for me. Everything is super fast over here as well, right? And then I can also install the web server on this operating system as well, like the way I installed it on AWS, right? This is just how you will get your system when you install Ubuntu on it. All right, and with this, guys, I basically demonstrated to you how you can launch servers on the top 3 cloud providers which are there available in the market, and with this we conclude our hands-on. Now for further learning, guys, you can go ahead and read more blogs about cloud computing from our Intellipaat domain. So all you have to do is go to intellipaat.com and go to the blogging section, and you'll be seeing all different kind of blogs that we offer. So if I were to give you an example, I can just go to intellipaat.com/blog, and with this website what you get is all the blogs that we have published, and we have published blogs on a lot of domains. We have big data, blockchain, BI, cloud computing, data mining. So all these blogs are there for you. You can go ahead, read more about them, learn to read it and learn more about what these technologies are, right? Similarly, we also happen to offer a course on cloud computing, right? So in our course we teach all we teach AWS, we teach Azure, we teach Google Cloud. So if you just want to learn AWS, you can just take any course for AWS with us, or if you want to learn everything in cloud, which is the top 3 cloud providers, you can go ahead and actually buy the Cloud Architect Masters course from us. Now a special thing for all our customers today who have joined in our YouTube session, you all have the chance of getting a flat 30% off just by using the coupon code YouTube30, right? You can also go ahead and you can just call on these numbers which are displayed on the screen, and you would be able to see, get in touch with our course advisors. Even if you have a doubt, even if you don't know what to take in your career, you are doing MCA, you are a system administrator, you want to shift to cloud, any domain you are from, right? If you want advice to how you should propagate your career, please give us a call on these numbers and we will be happy to assist you in your career growth. You can also email us at sales@intellipaat.com. And here we have a course which is the Cloud and DevOps Architect course. We have Cloud Computing Essentials, Google Cloud course, etc. So you can choose a course according to your preference, and then you can go ahead and basically join in our Intellipaat family, right? But like I said, guys, for all the people who have joined in today, you have the option of availing a 30% flat discount by putting in this coupon code, which is YouTube30. With this, I thank you all for joining on today in this session. I request you all to basically, go ahead and practice whatever we have practiced in this session today, so that you can get a better chance of knowing cloud, more better. And if you have any doubts with respect to whatever we taught in this session, please comment down in the comment section below, and we'll be happy to answer all your queries. Like I said, if you want professional help in going ahead with your career, we are also available there as well. You can call us on these numbers, or you can email us on this email ID, which is sales@intellipaat.com, and we'd be happy to assist you over there. Right, with that said, guys, have a great day ahead. Goodbye and happy learning.